The watchful eyes. In a peaceful apartment complex nestled amidst a bustling city, a young woman named Emily had found solace. She cherished her newfound independence after moving away from her family home. But soon, her newfound peace would turn into an eerie nightmare. Emily's apartment was on the 3rd floor, offering her a perfect view of the neighboring unit across the narrow courtyard. There, behind the windows of apartment 2B, lived her neighbor, Mr. Anderson. He appeared unremarkable, middle-aged, and rarely seen outside his unit. At first, Emily dismissed the feeling of being watched as paranoia. She told herself that it was just her imagination, an echo of her anxiety over living alone. Yet, those persistent prickles on the back of her neck wouldn't fade. It was as if an invisible presence watched her every move. One evening, curiosity got the better of Emily. While casually glancing out her window, she noticed something strange in Mr. Anderson's apartment, a room filled with surveillance equipment. Cameras, monitors, and cables covered every surface. The room looked like the command center of a spy agency. Her heart raced as she realized that her suspicions were not unfounded. Mr. Anderson wasn't just a reclusive neighbor. He was a voyeur, obsessed with her life. Her unease deepened when she discovered that the cameras were positioned to capture every inch of her apartment. Emily knew she couldn't ignore this chilling revelation any longer. With newfound determination, she began to investigate Mr. Anderson's background. What she discovered was even more disturbing. There were reports of his past obsession with women, culminating in restraining orders and incidents of stalking. It became clear that Mr. Anderson was fixated on her. He had been tracking her every movement, collecting photographs, and making detailed notes about her daily routine. Emily's blood ran cold as she realized the full extent of his obsession. Terrified and desperate to escape Mr. Anderson's watchful eyes, Emily decided to confront him herself. She knew it was risky, but she couldn't live in fear any longer. She carefully planned her approach, bringing along a can of pepper spray for protection. As she entered Mr. Anderson's apartment, her heart pounded in her chest. The room was as unsettling as she had imagined, with walls covered in photographs and notes about her life. To her horror, she also discovered a room filled with creepy, life-size dolls that bore a striking resemblance to her. Before she could react, Mr. Anderson appeared, his eyes filled with an eerie intensity. He stood between her and the door, blocking her escape. Panic surged through Emily as she realized the danger she was in. Thinking quickly, Emily reached for her pepper spray and sprayed it in Mr. Anderson's face. He screamed in pain, stumbling backward, giving her the chance she needed. She darted out of the apartment, her heart pounding in her chest. Emily raced back to her own apartment and immediately called the police, her voice trembling as she recounted the terrifying encounter. She knew that time was of the essence, and the police needed to apprehend her obsessive neighbor before he could harm her or anyone else. Soon, the sound of sirens approached, growing louder until the police arrived at her door. Emily recounted the horrifying details of her encounter with Mr. Anderson, and they wasted no time in apprehending him. They found him in his apartment, still reeling from the effects of the pepper spray. As the police conducted a thorough search of Mr. Anderson's unit, they uncovered the disturbing evidence of his obsession. The photographs, notes, and the room filled with life-size dolls painted a chilling picture of his fixation on Emily. It was clear that she had narrowly escaped a perilous fate. Mr. Anderson was taken into custody, and charges were filed against him. Emily was granted a restraining order, ensuring that he could never come near her again. She could finally breathe a sigh of relief, knowing that she was safe from his watchful eyes. However, the terror and paranoia lingered long after Mr. Anderson's arrest. Emily couldn't shake the feeling that she was being watched, that someone else might be lurking in the shadows. She became hyper-vigilant, constantly looking over her shoulder. The watchful eyes had left an indelible mark on Emily's life, a haunting reminder that some nightmares were all too real. The apartment complex that had once offered her solace became a place of fear and unease. But as time passed, Emily slowly regained her sense of security, determined not to let the darkness of the past define her future. Story 2. The Mysterious Newcomer. In a quaint, aging apartment building nestled within the heart of a bustling city, there was an enigmatic neighbor. No one knew her name. She was simply referred to as the Hermit. Her arrival had been shrouded in mystery, and she seldom ventured beyond the confines of her dimly lit apartment. As the nights wore on, a peculiar disturbance began to haunt the building. Residents on the same floor as the Hermit reported eerie sounds emanating from her apartment. It was as if otherworldly incantations filled the air, accompanied by the clinking of metal and the rustling of papers. Intrigued and disturbed, several neighbors decided to investigate the nocturnal activities of the Hermit. They gathered outside her apartment one moonless night, listening to the unsettling cacophony within. It was a symphony of whispers and chanting, punctuated by the occasional bang and creak. Summoning their courage, they decided to confront the enigmatic neighbor knocking on her door. The door swung open slowly, revealing a dimly lit room bathed in a ghostly, flickering light. The sight that greeted them sent shivers down their spines. Inside the apartment, the Hermit stood before a makeshift altar adorned with peculiar belongings: a lock of hair, a photograph, and personal items from various residents of the building. She wore a tattered robe and held an ancient tome, its pages filled with cryptic symbols and incantations. With a menacing glare, the Hermit threatened the neighbors, warning them to stay out of her affairs. But the residents had had enough of the unsettling disturbances that had plagued their nights. They demanded that she cease her activities immediately or leave the building. As tension filled the room, the neighbors refused to back down, united in their determination to put an end to the disturbing rituals. The Hermit, realizing she was outnumbered and facing the collective will of her neighbors, reluctantly agreed to stop. Relieved and unnerved by the encounter, the residents retreated to their own apartments, but the memory of that night would forever linger. The enigmatic neighbor had been forced to abandon her sinister practices, but the unsettling presence of her past actions would forever haunt the building. After the tense standoff with their enigmatic neighbor, the residents returned to their apartments, relieved but still shaken by the encounter. The night passed in an uneasy silence, broken only by the occasional creaking of the old building. The following morning, as the sun cast its feeble light upon the apartment building, the neighbors ventured into the hallway, eager to ensure that the unsettling rituals had ceased. But what they found sent a chill down their spines. The Hermit's apartment was empty, devoid of any trace of her presence. Confusion and fear gripped the residents as they wondered how she had vanished without a trace. No one had seen her leave, and there was no sign of forced entry or struggle. It was as if she had evaporated into thin air, leaving behind only the lingering sense of dread. As the days turned into weeks and then months, the residents of the apartment building could only speculate about the fate of their enigmatic neighbor. Some believed she had been a specter, a phantom conjured by their collective fear. Others thought she had fled to continue her sinister practices elsewhere. The enigmatic neighbor remained an unsolved mystery, a chilling tale of the unknown, where the line between the mundane and the supernatural blurred. The Hermit's abrupt disappearance served as a haunting reminder that some mysteries would never be unraveled, leaving the residents to wonder what other secrets their aging building might hold. Story 3. The Neighbor's Secret. Tom had returned home late from a thrilling basketball game, the echoes of cheers and the exhilaration of victory still fresh in his mind. The clock struck midnight as he exited the elevator on his floor, a wave of exhaustion washing over him. Little did he know that this night would be far from ordinary. As Tom stepped into the dimly lit hallway outside his apartment, an unsettling sensation crawled up his spine. The flickering overhead lights seemed to hesitate, casting eerie shadows that danced across the walls. He quickened his pace, eager to reach the safety of his own home. Then, without warning, The hallway plunged into darkness. The lights went out, leaving Tom in pitch-black silence. Panic welled up within him as he fumbled for his phone, his fingers trembling in the darkness. In the oppressive silence, Tom's ears strained to catch any sound that might explain the sudden blackout. And then he heard it, a faint, deliberate scraping sound like metal dragging across the floor. His heart raced as he realized that he was not alone in the darkness. The footsteps grew steadily closer, each step resonating with an eerie certainty. Fear gripped Tom, but he knew he had to find his phone's flashlight function to see what was approaching. Finally, Tom's fingers found the phone, and he hastily activated the flashlight. The beam of light pierced the darkness, revealing the source of the approaching footsteps. It was his neighbor, Mr. Harris, who lived across the hall. Mr. Harris stood there, his gaunt face illuminated by the eerie glow of the phone. His eyes, devoid of warmth, locked onto Tom's with a cold, unnerving intensity. The tension in the hallway was palpable as Tom mustered the courage to speak. "Did you hear that noise just now?" Tom asked, his voice quivering with unease. Mr. Harris's response sent shivers down Tom's spine. In a tone that seemed to carry an ancient, sinister knowledge, he replied, "Oh, I heard it, Tom. I heard it loud and clear." Tom stood there, frozen in dread, his phone's flashlight trembling in his grip. His gaze fixated on Mr. Harris, who held a large axe in his hand, the glint of its blade reflecting the eerie light. "What were you doing in the darkness?" Tom stammered, his voice barely a whisper. Mr. Harris's eyes, devoid of warmth, locked onto Tom's with a cold, unnerving intensity. He leaned closer, his voice low and filled with urgency. "Listen carefully, Tom," he warned, his words dripping with an unsettling gravity. "There are dangerous men looking for me. You must stay away from the hallway, and you must never speak of this encounter to anyone, or you will regret it." Tom's heart raced as he processed the chilling warning. What danger had Mr. Harris stumbled into, and why did he feel compelled to hide it from the world, even at the risk of a menacing axe? As the lights in the hallway flickered back to life, Mr. Harris retreated into his apartment, the door clicking shut with a finality that left Tom feeling more unsettled than ever. The encounter had revealed a sinister secret, but the true nature of the darkness that lurked in the hallway remained shrouded in mystery. The neighbor's secret had deepened, leaving Tom to grapple with the terrifying reality that something malevolent had taken residence in their once peaceful apartment building, and he was now entangled in its chilling web of secrets and danger.